lot of tourists, and all of a sudden they're there.
Wow,
Ran into
so great.
on Mott Street or something.
With them.
Are we on?
You are.
We're on. Here we go.
Any juicy details you want to tell about them while we're on? No. Well, I want to welcome everybody here on this cold, but slightly, it's less windy now than earlier today. I thank the people that braved the weather to come out and the shutting down the green line for all of December. Thanks for coming. And our live stream audience, as always, people that are watching now, we'll have signed copies of the book. That's awful sign afterwards, store stock. And so you can, if you want a signed copy, if you're looking at the video of this event later on, as long as we still have signed copies, just say in the memo section of the website when you purchase the book you'd like a signed copy. And if we run out, and it's just in New York, so I'm there, here and there, so I can get more signed copies. This Facebook has changed their policies. So now all videos that are posted are deleted after 30 days. So that means this video will be on our page for 30 days, but then it's going to, it'll be on our YouTube channel, which we hastily set it, get these set up. So a lot of the videos over the past 10 years, including our video with Jenny Slate and Ben Shattuck and others, is on there now, and this one will be on there sometime next week. And so it'll permanently be there. And then they'll have a hyperlink. So again, if you again are watching this later and you want the book, you'll be able to easily get the book from there. So the next event that we've got coming up at either store is here again, January 31st with William Mann, and that is a special event, the book Black Dahlia that comes out in January. Back in the day in Hollywood, the famous Black Dahlia murders, and we're working with a domestic violence organization here in Boston, and there'll be a presentation with them as well on the table of materials. There's domestic violence in the book, and William is intentionally working to, wherever possible, to ask bookstores to partner with domestic violence organizations around the country as he's doing these talks, and so we're doing that. And there's information on our website and link to the organization there. So we hope you'll come out for that event. His last book on Bogey and McCall being made into a movie. And William is a really great guy if you get a chance to come and meet him. And then the rest of the schedule you'll see on the website. Some interesting things that I got booked. We recently trip to London. They're kind of going to be kind of different. One is we have the co-founder of art gallery in Paris and London, Boys, Boys, Boys. So the gallery and cafe, and they represent and highlight queer photographers and models from around the world. And there'll be a 1 week, I'll be doing this with 20 Summers, a nonprofit. There'll be a 1 week gallery showing at their gallery space Stanley, which is in Provincetown. And then there'll be a panel discussion and a party on one of those nights, probably on a Friday, Saturday of that week. So there'll be information soon about that. And then I'm excited, can't wait to get the dates down, but we'll have Thomasina Myers coming, OBE from London, who's the founder of Oaxaca Restaurants and other restaurants. Has a new cookbook already out in the UK, it'll be out in the spring in America. So it'll be a combined event here in Boston and Provincetown. So there'll be a talk, and then there'll be a special pop-up dinner where she will be cooking herself.
Wow.
I hear it'll probably be at Greg Kristen's, either her main restaurant, what's up here for, or her new one in Tapas Bar next door. And in Provincetown, we're talking to Helltown. It's a great restaurant right across from the bookstore there. So that'll be something unique for people that want to have that experience, an additional experience. With Thomasina, she's really amazing human being. So that's among some of the stuff, interesting things will be happening, and you'll see all the rest on there as well. So we're excited to have Bob here in Boston. We had an event, was it 2 years ago?
2 years.
2 years ago, which was it was a lot of fun. It was with Judy Gold, the comedian and podcaster, and Judy did a live recording of her podcast at our bookstore in Provincetown with Bob as the guest. So it was a combination of, I was just talking about the book, filmmaking, and then she is just Judy's so funny that she had her big gong or bell
Yes, there's
there,
a bell she rings anytime there's a mention of Judaism.
or anything closely related to it. So it's hilarious. So it's a lot of fun. It's very interesting, and in fact, I wanted to. Is that? I didn't listen to the.
I think it's still online, but she doesn't do the podcast anymore.
Stop. Okay.
Yeah, but I think the archive's still there.
I gotta go in there and listen. I want to listen to that again. So that was a really fun event. But so Bob was previously an infantry and intelligence officer in the U.S. Army, serving in Germany during the Cold War and Iraq and the Persian Gulf War. He's the winner of the Nicol Fellowship from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. He has written numerous screenplays for major studios, directed feature films, Land of the Blind, starring Ray Fiennes, Donald Sutherland, and Tom Hollander, and When I Lived My Life Over Again, starring Christopher Walken and Amber Heard, and produced the feature documentaries Sumo East and West, and The Last Laugh with his wife, Fern Perlstein, and Death and Taxes with Justin, I probably will get that. Shine. Terrible pronunciation. He has a BA in history from Lafayette College and an MA in communication from Stanford, and writes The King's Necktie, a blog about politics and culture, which I highly recommend you sign up to get the email for that.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed getting them, and I guess they can just Google that, right?
Yeah, it's on Substack. If you just type in King's Necktie.
The King's Necktie. So if you haven't seen this, take a look at that. Anyway, when we did the event 2 years ago, they were talking about how important the book is and timely, and sadly, is it even more important now? As we seem to be rapidly rushing towards fascism in this country. And if you haven't read this book yet, first of all, it's very readable. It's very, very interesting. It's also very practical too in terms of things that you can do. So anyway, to say, as Bill Moyer said, combines the revelations of unfolding tragedy with the artistry of storytelling. Highly recommend the book, Resisting the Right, How to Survive the Gathering Storm. Well, the storm is now here. And how do we get through the next 1 year, the next 3 years? And I guess as friends of mine were saying at a dinner party in London last week, the big question right now is, in 1 year, his history says that the party in the White House loses the House, right? And the poll numbers show that Trump likes to win, so he is winning in one respect. He's now got the lowest poll numbers of any president, even lower than the last one with the lowest poll numbers, which was also him when he was last president. And so we're just in this scenario now where it's just a very, very, very dangerous time. But the question is, when he was out of office for 4 years, he spent a lot of time putting a lot of election deniers into local election offices across the country. And a lot of my friends question whether there will be a fair election or not. So I guess we'll see. The Democrats don't get the House, so I think we have our answer. And then we've got a real fight in the next couple of years beyond that. But so anyway, so we just have to all stand together. And this is one of those books where it's obviously a very serious book in a very serious time, but it also, I feel, gives you some hope because it gives you some tools, and you also feel like you've got some resources, and you're a part of a community of people like many of us are active with a lot of it. And that's the other reason why I suggest that you subscribe to Substack, because that's something on an ongoing basis that I think gives factual, but also gives you a lot of hope as we're trying to deal with what's happening here and trying to get our minds around what's going on here in this country and our completely, once again, tattered, destroyed relationship elsewhere in the world, which you'll find very, very quickly when you travel abroad. What they think about, but I was really pleased to see that people are distinguishing at least between the government and the people. But anyway, without further ado, I give you comment.
Well, Jeff, thank you. You covered a lot of ground there, so I don't have anything to add.
He's also a stand-up comedian.
No. Well, just to start sort of from the beginning, my friend Paul is here, and we were both Army intelligence officers. And one of the things that they trained us to do was to think about the future, was to think down the road, over the horizon, as they say at the Pentagon, and to think about all the different possibilities of things that could happen. So around 2022, I started thinking about 24 and what it would look like. And I didn't want to wake up the day after the election and find that Trump had been reelected and just be completely at a loss and not know what to do. So I started thinking about what can we do now to prepare. Of course, I was hopeful that we would win, but I thought, let's think about the range of scenarios. Worst case scenario, best case scenario, and prepare. So I proposed the book to Colin Robinson, or books, and he liked the idea, and I wrote it. And for a while, during the process of writing it, things looked very promising, especially after the midterms. We thought, you know, this might be okay. And we even kind of thought about, well, maybe we should reconfigure this book to be less about Trump and Trumpism and more about the long-term right-wing threat. And we did do that to some extent. But as it turns out, the book came out in the summer of 2024, and a few months later, Trump did win again, as we all know. So unfortunately, where I had hoped that the book would go on a shelf and not be needed, break glass in case of emergency, down the road if another fascist threat arrived, it turned out to be unfortunately timely in the present moment. And so here we are now. To talk about the book itself, it's kind of in three parts. It sort of offers a survey of, if you've read it, you know, how we got to this state of affairs, briefly, what the current state of play looks like, what are the things we could do before the 2024 election to try to protect democracy, and then the third part of the book is the kind of worst case scenario section. What do we do if we do find ourselves in a situation of a right-wing authoritarian government coming to power? And that's what we're dealing with now. And it looks at that across a wide range of remedies. Everything from conventional resistance, protests, demonstration, and what people think of as an opposition, to economic levers like boycotts, strikes, what can be done in the media, what can be done in organized religion, what can be done in our schools, public health, the arts, and even interpersonal relationships, the most basic things. We all have people in our lives we deal with who have different political opinions. So it's sort of laid out like that. And it's very kind of you, Jeff, to promote the book. And I do think it has a lot of practical advice in there. But the most important thing that undergirds it all is what James Carroll said to me, who wrote the foreword for the book, a longtime columnist for the Boston Globe and novelist and theologian, historian, that if you look at the whole picture of it, it's very daunting. I mean, we've all felt it. Like, you open the paper, metaphorically, the electronic paper in the morning, and you see the latest atrocity, and it can just be overwhelming. But Jim, who's a veteran of the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, and the fight for democracy and justice and truth for many, many decades, said you have to focus on the truth of the present moment and not get discouraged and not become overwhelmed by that avalanche of shit every day. And every day, the small victories that you can achieve keep you going, and eventually they build into big victories. As Jeff said, we are 1 year into, not quite 1 year into this administration. The thing that I didn't anticipate when I wrote the book was how fast things would happen. The pace of what Trump and his folks have done since taking power has really been shocking to me and to many people, I think. I don't know that very many people predicted the pace at which they would dismantle a lot of the institutions of American democracy. And that's been head-spinning, to say the least. But at the same time, I think we've seen how wobbly it is now, 12 months, 11 months into it. I do feel like we're at a moment where they've had a lot of victories and have just steamrolled over a lot of things, norms, and even laws that we thought could never be violated, and now they're violated on a daily basis. But they're also having plenty of defeats, and I do think that the American people, as you can see from recent special elections, are unhappy and are turning against the administration. But that leads to another issue which Jeff alluded to, which is that makes the situation more dangerous, not less, right? Because the number one most threatening and dangerous thing, in my view, is the integrity of our elections. And even that term has been weaponized by folks who want to undermine the integrity of those elections. if you don't have a free and fair election, obviously you can't have a functioning democracy. And so if you've got an administration in power like this one that really does not even hide the fact that they are authoritarian and anti-democratic, and even trumpets that fact, and they are losing the vote, they are losing the support of the people, it just means that they will try to clamp down even harder. And so I think that we have to be, and this is not news to anybody, very, very on guard for what happens in the midterms coming up less than a year from now. I mean, as Jeff said, a lot of not so admirable folks have been put in charge of the very machinery by which we choose our elected officials. So I'm concerned about the integrity of the 2026 midterms. I certainly don't think that it's a foregone conclusion. In fact, I'm fairly hopeful that the system, because it's so decentralized, is hard to rig. And despite their attempts to cheat, to gerrymander, to have mid-census redistricting in states like Texas and so forth, I feel like that their efforts in that regard are coming up against a lot of opposition, especially from the courts, somewhat from the media, and grassroots opposition as well. But I think that the intensity of that is only going to increase over the next few months. Between now and November 2026, 10 months away, we're going to see a tremendous, tremendous focus on that, on trying to intimidate the American public. You put ICE agents in the streets, you put National Guardsmen in the streets. That is the sort of stuff that you see in banana republics, and I'm very concerned about the effect that that will have on the midterm elections. But I do think that what I would call the forces of the pro-democracy movement, the anti-Trump forces, have got momentum on our side. And I think that going into those elections 10 months from now, we have a very good chance of winning back the House and maybe even the Senate. And if that were to happen, that would really make a tremendous difference in this country, in the ability of the opposition party to put the brakes on this authoritarian project. Now, we've seen that Trump and that authoritarian project are not deterred by any rule of law, and will try to break the rules and defy the courts and all kinds of other terrible stuff. But it would still be very helpful if we had a majority in Congress in one or both houses to cut off the funding for ICE and other efforts that the administration is carrying out to try to undermine democracy. So there's a lot of work still to be done. It's hard to imagine what this country will look like 3 years from now. We're only 1 year into this administration. I don't know. I have turned in my my psychic's card because I have been wrong so many times in predicting what's going to happen. And I've also stopped thinking that anything is impossible or beyond the pale, because time and time again, things that I thought could never happen have happened. So I do think everything is still on the table. But I'm guardedly optimistic, and I think that we have a real chance of pushing back and regaining a foothold in democratic governance in this country, beginning with midterms in 2026. Jeff mentioned my blog. The book grew out of a blog that I started writing in 2017, in May of 2017, soon after Trump began his first term. The blog is called The King's Necktie, and it was really just a way for me to vent, for me to, get shit off my chest that was making me crazy and making me feel like my head would explode, and I knew so many other people who felt the same way. I wasn't trying to change any minds of folks across the aisle, and I'm proud to say I don't think I did change anyone's mind, as far as I can tell. But I was trying to communicate with like-minded folks, like presumably the people who are listening and watching this, so that we can organize, so that we can communicate, so we can share information, so we can keep up each other's morale, and do whatever we can as ordinary citizens, and to pressure our elected officials and other levers of power to try to defend democracy in this country. The last thing I want to say, and then I'd be happy to turn this into a conversation rather than a monologue, is that the book is called Resisting the Right. Although in some ways resistance is not the right word. There's a piece early on in the book that talks about the term resistance. And Michelle Alexander, who wrote The New Jim Crow, had a really, really great piece in the New York Times early in Trump's first term about the word resistance. That we are not really the resistance. They are the resistance, right? We are the mighty river of humanity and freedom and democracy and justice that they are trying to damn. And likewise, the subtitle, How to Survive the Gathering Storm. Gathering Storm is there deliberately as an allusion to fascism in the 40s, but we aim to do more than survive, okay? I wrote a blog recently about how I count myself shamefacedly among a large group of folks, especially white folks, who woke up after Trump's first electoral victory, just kind of shocked that this could happen in America. And a lot of my friends who are black or brown kind of, what's the right word, found that a naive proposition. For a lot of people in this country, that fascist, authoritarian, violent strain has always been present and has been a daily reality of their lives. So we don't aim just to evict Trump and go back to the status quo ante as if everything was okay. What we aim to do is, from the ashes of this incredibly anti-American, un-American administration that we're dealing with right now, we aim to build something better, to make this a better country, and to live up to the promises that are enshrined in the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and all those documents that founding fathers wrote that are held up to our school children and are praised on Fox News and things like that, to make them actually be legitimate and real and not merely aspirational. So that's my stump speech. Thank you guys for coming out on a cold Friday night, windy Friday night at Christmas time, when you could be lots of other much more pleasant places to talk about much more heartwarming Christmas-timey things than this, but I really appreciate it. So if anybody has anything that they want to add, church service style, questions or comments, or just throw it open.
So Bob,
Yes.
we've known each other for 40 years. I
Yeah,
guess.
40 years.
So intelligence officers, first off, I'm just going to say, I didn't vote for Trump, okay?
I'm glad to hear it.
And, but as an intelligence officer, I always have my hat on, and I try to look at all sides of the coin, okay? So we watch, a lot of different media, as everybody else does in this world, but as I told you all the time, we'll put CNN on for a while, I'll put the BBC on for a while, I'll put Fox on for a while, I'll put MSNBC on for a while. I want to hear all sides.
Yeah.
I'll make the call on
Right.
what I believe, and it's getting very hard to figure out what's true, right? You can't stand any one, at least I can't, any one of them for too long, because it's so biased, right, in terms of my opinion. And so, again, from my training and from yours, we try to make sure we look at all sides of the coin.
Yeah.
So, how do you differentiate nowadays? You got AI going on. There's a lot of disinformation,
Yeah.
misinformation, right? Those are the buzzwords out there right now.
Yeah.
Something that we've been talking about for years.
Yeah.
So how do you figure out what's really accurate, what's not accurate, what's right, what's wrong?
Yeah.
And when I look at some of the things that are happening, I think some of the things I go, yeah, some of the things are okay, a lot of things not so good.
Right.
And it's kind of like, if I didn't say the word Trump, would I say some of these things are good?
Yeah.
If his name wasn't attached to it,
Right.
I'd say maybe some of that stuff's okay.
Right.
But because his name's attached to it, it's not okay. So this is how I look at it in my lens, because of my background
Right.
and what I've done. Right. So I don't know, how you do it, but that's kind of how I do it. And I'm pretty much down the middle. I pull it all in and figure it out, and I assess it myself. I don't let other people assess for me. So, and that's a hard thing to do nowadays, because there's so much.
Well, that's the problem. There's
Right.
so much, and it's less trustworthy than it's ever been.
Yep.
For the reasons you said. Well, for AI, for one thing, that's a completely different
Yeah.
category.
And
of,
that's making it get.
It's only going to get worse. But even without AI, the bias is a problem.
No doubt.
When we were kids, our parents would watch Walter Cronkite or John Chancellor or whoever, and that was considered reliable,
Gold standard.
gold standard, right? unfortunately, one of the worst things about the Trump era for me is the destruction of objective truth as something that we can all agree upon as a metric. These days, you have to be extremely critical in the way that you just described, I think, of all the media that you consume, and ask yourself whether it can be trusted, whether it's truthful, check it against other sources, regardless of where it comes from. If you're doing that the way that you described, that's about as good as you can do as a citizen and a consumer. And your opinion that you come to, whatever it is probably going to be well informed and a reasonable opinion. If you're tribal and doctrinaire and only listen to your side, I think that's super unhealthy. You know, and I don't believe that there's very fine people on both sides. I do think that the right wing has weaponized disinformation in a way that there is really no analog on the left. But that's not really the point. The point is that the destruction of critical thinking is one of the worst things that's happened, I think, in the last 30 years. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I was pleased to learn that her school is really trying, anyway, to teach the kids to do that. They teach them to assess the source. This is just what we learned as intelligence officers, right? How reliable is the source of this information? Right. I opened my computer this morning, and there was a post on Facebook from somebody who I know tangentially, very smart person, and they had posted something that was very, very favorable to my side of the aisle, but it just seemed too good to be true. And it didn't take much digging to find out it was completely false. It was as false as could be. And I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I was able to discover that in like 2 clicks, okay? So we all have to do that. We all have to, because there are people who deliberately want to fool us and to spread both misinformation and disinformation, right? And for people who, I think most people know this, but I'll say it anyway, misinformation is usually characterized as accidentally wrong information, something that's wrong. It could be an honest error. Disinformation is actively designed to lie to you, okay? And both of those things are out there in massive volumes, especially on the internet. And so I think that the best we can do is what you said. Assess your sources, go into it with an open mind, understand that there are people, bad actors out there who want to lie to you, and also there are good actors or neutral actors who get things wrong, and try to wade through it all. It's a tremendous task, and get to some sort of semblance of the truth. The other thing I wanted to mention was that, oh God, I've lost my train of thought.
Well,
it'll come back.
While you're going through that, I mean, we can't even, it's another dinner party was that we can't even trust our own government anymore. We cannot rely on factual information coming from the government.
Right.
I mean, they're changing things. They're lying about vaccinations, and other things. It's just real. They always have, but the government bureaucrats, by and large, you used to be able to count on the information, the data collection, et cetera, that you could rely on what they were saying to you, and you could then make your own decisions still, unless it was something mandatory, in terms of healthcare or whatever it is. But now you're looking at, the people that are in charge on all levels of government, on the federal government now. I don't trust any of them. I don't trust anything that's coming out of these agencies any longer. And I say that as somebody who, not only a bookseller, filmmaker like you, but, I was poli-sci history double major, and I served for a number of years as a senior assistant attorney general in Florida. I've never seen it this bad ever, and it's very frustrating because, you can't, it's like you said, we have to really do fact checking on both sides on everything that comes out now. But to me, what's even more astounding is the fact that, the Trump administration has been very successful in one of their many goals, which is destruction of the government. And so now there are so many people they've either fired or forced out or early buyouts that the institutional memory is going at all levels, the CIA and every level. And it's become a situation where it used to be that it was a badge of honor to serve in the government, because you could rely on the government, you were helping other people. Now it's just completely horrible all the way around. People don't, it's not a government where the top officials are saying we're here and our loyalty is to the country. it's loyalty to Trump, and he's making sure of that. So that's very, very, very dangerous. So I'm just wondering how long it's going to take once they're finally out to build back up trust in the government and all many levels of the government where people just no longer trust anything. And now, as you mentioned, with AI, I mean, I don't trust AI at all. So it's like, so where are we now as the average citizen that's out there that's trying to decipher what's true and what's not true, and what's coming from our government, what's true and what's not true?
Yeah, well, I think the politicization of bureaucracy is another of the really, really terrible developments, because as you said, it used to be you trusted bureaucrats and government officials, not necessarily elected officials, but professional government employees, to do their jobs, to be nonpartisan and to tell you the truth, and not be serving the agenda of either party per se, at least not as the main objective. And that's been destroyed, right? And I think that the destruction of the government is a stated objective of this administration. Steve Bannon said it, right? He's like a Leninist who wants to destroy the administrative state, right? They want you to not have faith in the government. And therefore they make the government bad so that you don't have faith in the government, right? They tell you it's bad, then they make it bad. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Deliberately appointing people to head agencies that they are with the mandate of destroying them from within, like RFK Jr., like Betsy DeVos in the Department of Education, or Linda McMahon in the second administration. FEMA's in the middle of a crisis with Greg Phillips, who's just been appointed to a high-ranking post there, who's an election denier and a conspiracy theorist. Time and time again, they put people in positions to destroy the very organization that they are supposed to lead. And it's deliberate. I mean, I think that the question of how we're going to fix it and how long it will take is beyond our ken at the moment. We're not there yet, right?
Yeah.
Although we have to think about it, as I was saying before, we have to think down the road. But I think some of the damage is permanent, and even the damage that isn't permanent, a lot of it has been very, very extensive and will take decades probably to repair, if it can ever be repaired. Which gets me back to something else that Paul said that I don't remember what I was going to say. That's a really interesting technique, is to say to yourself, here's the policy, let's take the name Trump out and see what you would think. I think that's a good acid test. But I would also say that he and his administration have not earned our trust, right? So if you take his name out and you say, this is a policy, it's about government efficiency, or it's about simplifying the tax code, or whatever it is, it's hard to assess it objectively, because knowing who's doing it, I don't even trust them, even when it's a legitimate, on the face of it seems legitimate. So it may be legitimate, it may even be a good idea. Sometimes things happen, good things happen accidentally. But I feel like he has not earned the benefit of the doubt. Like in the beginning of the first term, you used to hear people say, Dave Chappelle said it at SNL, his monologue right after the election, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Fair enough. We gave him the benefit of the doubt. I think he has exhausted that. So I don't give him the benefit of the doubt. But I do think that's an excellent thought experiment or technique for taking the partisanship out of your assessment of any given policy or situation.
Well, I think you have to have ways to do that, because people aren't going to do it for you. So they're going to try to do it.
Right, but you can't trust them.
You got to be smart enough to figure out, okay, how am I really going to weed through all this? And this is such a difficult thing, because everybody's got jobs, you've got families, blah blah blah. So how do you do it? It's not easy, right? And so it can be on either side, right? So you could have somebody, past administration, future administration, it's all going to be this way, and it probably always has been.
Yeah.
It's just you have to be, I'm not going to say smart enough, but you have to have the time, and a lot of people don't have the time to do it, and that's part of the problem.
The average person.
And we're doing
does not.
sound bites, right? It's like, okay, you get 4 minutes of this, or clickbait, and this, TikTok, whatever. And so it's kind of like, oh, I saw this, and then, like I'll talk to friends and they say, well, I just saw this, and this. So I said, well, did you look at something else, on another source? And they go, no, I never did. I go, well, maybe you should, just to satisfy that maybe that source was right or not right. So it's not easy, hard thing to do, and I try to play the balance game of trying to figure it out, and I'm certainly not right. I'll use my 80-20 rule. I'm probably going 20% of the time, right? Or
That's pretty good batting average.
80, I'm sorry, I flipped it.
Yeah.
80% wrong and 20% right. But so it's just very difficult. I mean, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, we have these conversations all the time.
We do, because I for watching a, whatever media that I'm annoyed with, I want to change, but I'll want to change prior to when he's ready to. So we,
Because I want to hear it out.
Try to hear it out, and it's hard sometimes. You
hard.
don't want to listen to it, but
It's
it
like-
is a good exercise. I
It's
agree
like,
with you, but
listen
sometimes
to
you just
it,
gotta
but
walk
you
away.
don't mean you agree with it, but you should take it in.
But in the book, I talk a little bit about how this is really depressing. There's a lot of scholarship that says that just being exposed to fake news is bad for you, even when you know it's fake. It's something about the human brain, and the repetition of a lie will get into your brain. So that's why it's hard to debunk fake news. Like George Lakoff talks about the truth sandwich. So you hear a falsehood, right? You have to state the truth, debunk the falsehood, and then state the truth again to reinforce it in the human brain. Otherwise, people will go away believing like, whatever, immigrants are bringing in drugs, whatever the lie du jour is. And
That's
the
why
volume of
Trump
it-
does so well with it, because Roy Cohn was, his great advisor for a long time, and the motto was, if you tell a lie enough times, there's going to be a core group of people who believe it, and then eventually people, as time goes on, will forget what's true, what's not
Let's
true.
talk about January 6th, right? The big lie. Well, there's several big lies.
One of the
Right?
biggest.
One big lie is that the election was stolen.
Yeah.
But January 6th, I think we all remember. Maybe we don't all remember. A lot of Americans have forgotten. I watched it live, and it was hard to comprehend what was going on in the moment. It was so outrageous. Talk about things you didn't think could ever happen in America. But on January 7th, most of America, even bigwigs in the Republican Party, were appalled. And we were all in a kind of state of shock. All right, now it's been almost 5 years, and it has been successfully turned. Not for everybody, of course, but for a large chunk of the American people. It's a day of love. It was a peaceful protest. The only violence was false flag. These are the kind of insidious lies you would think. If I'd said to you on January 7th, 2021, 5 years from now, a lot of people are going to believe that there was no violence. You'd be like, oh man, it's on video.
Right.
But there is, it's like Holocaust denial. I'm not comparing it to the Holocaust, but I'm saying there is nothing so big that a group of people cannot be made to believe the opposite of the truth. And this gets back to what we were saying before, the fire hose of information because of technology that we are hit with on a daily basis is more than anybody can take in. I don't care if you have nothing better to do all day than just sort through the news. If you don't have a job or whatever, it is still more than you can take in. And the human brain is not made to take in this kind of onslaught, but particularly the manipulation of technology, disinformation is targeted toward you specifically. I'm sure we've all had the experience of having a conversation about widgets, and then you open up your social media and you got an ad for widgets, right? That's how specifically they can target you. And when it's turned and weaponized for a political purpose, it is almost impossible to resist, no matter how smart you are, how diligent you are, how hard you work. And so that is the challenge before us. James.
Hey there.
Hey, James.
Here's something I've got not worked out at all, but very fascinating to me in the past year or so since you wrote your book. Alexander Hamilton referred to this notion of dispatch. And I spoke with a buddy about, sort of this Unitarian president, like the all-powerful president thing, and why Congress is somewhat abdicating their duties. And he said, they've all been around a long time and nothing ever gets done. So they're just so excited to see things done. Dispatch, right? Moving quickly. On the left, you have almost the same sort of clarion calls. You have the Abundance book, Thompson and Klein, right? And they're singing sort of the same song, right? How to get things done without, they make a big deal about Shapiro out of Pennsylvania, who got the 95 conduit fixed by leaving Congress to the side and just executive action push that through, and he becomes immediately a presidential hopeful despite his religious background. This is caught me by surprise, right? How much screaming for dispatch. Newsom, right, got things started. He started to dispatch in California and even tipped his hat to the abundance guys on that. But I would say, you know, they wrote their book before the election. I didn't expect it, like you said, Trump to come in and really dispatch the crap out of everything. And it's really quite shocking, but there is a shine to getting things done. If you look at our government, you know, if you go to DC, where all these massive, beautiful buildings, none of them made since 1972, right? You know, James Madison, I think, is the Library of Congress, and that's really it. And then, you know, all these other, how did we build them without all the complaints and all the fire? And so maybe, you know, since this is a newer side, maybe you have some thoughts about this aspect.
I mean, I'm not super familiar with the concept of dispatch, but I can certainly understand the appeal of getting shit done. It's exciting.
Right.
And if it's your side that's doing the getting done, and there are things that you want done, it's like exhilarating, right? But I think it speaks to the frustration of the American people with the status quo ante that I referred to before. Right? It's a joke. The government is a joke. Setting aside the current moment, just the whole idea of a government, of bureaucracy, that's the stereotype. It's slow moving. It's stodgy. You know, you can't fight City Hall. The DMV is the worst place in the world. All that sort of stuff. And it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's true to a certain extent, getting things done. Unfortunately, I think the appeal of the unitary executive theory, a monarchy, really, I get it, but this country was founded in opposition to that idea. There's no doubt that a king who doesn't have to deal with a legislature or voters or anything can just, by fiat, make shit happen. That's great. But there's a real downside to it. And so somewhere there's got to be balance to me, right? I would like us to move to, let's just leapfrog ahead and say that we get out of the Trump era. And by the way, I don't blame it all on Trump, not even close. This is all in the book. You know, he's a symptom, not the cause. And when he's dead and gone, he's a unicorn and a con man of a special world-beating caliber. So I don't expect another one to come along very soon. But the conditions that led to him will still be there. And so it's going to take a long time to get past it. But let's say we do get past it. The goal, I think, would be to achieve something like you're describing, right? Let's have a better system than we had before. Let's not have such partisanship and gridlock and obstructionism in Congress that we can't get anything done. But maybe we can do different things that are being done now, right? Like the mobilization of ICE to terrorize brown people in this country, to me, is not a good use of government resources, no matter how efficiently it's done. I understand that if you like that, it's exciting to see. I don't think the American people like it, judging by recent election results. I don't think they like it. But I do think they would like to have a functioning government that we have a say in, that executes the will of the people, the will of the majority or whatever, in an effective way. And I mean, we could talk about this. This might be a good venue for it, actually. James has done a lot of work in transparency, and it's such an interesting and complicated issue. Do you want to say a little bit about it? Go for it.
All right. Article 1, Section 5 of the Constitution, Clause 3, provides the Congress with unlimited, as was argued in the ratification debates in Virginia, secrecy. So an impeachment vote could be done secret. So verification in the Senate could be done secretly. All committees, when John F. Kennedy was a senator in the 50s, all important committees were secret. So all his votes, all his proposals are not just kept in a box somewhere, they were never reported. And lobbyists struggled with this, and funders struggled with this, because you're not going to run an attack ad against someone who might be voting in your favor, or vice versa. You might not be funding someone who's going to be voting against you. It aligns precisely with the secret ballot. Hamilton once again said that transparency basically leads to benefits for factions, right? And they were that was one of their big goals of writing the Constitution, was to fight factions. And so what few people realize is October 26, 1970, a president most people are familiar with, Nixon signs the Legislative Reorganization Act, pre-Watergate Nixon, he's still broadly supported, that opens up all the committees of Congress. And an important one being the Committee of the Whole, where they used to, basically quash powerful special groups. And we see that align very well with the rise of gridlock, lobbying, money in Congress. And we see, fortunately, science isn't very good if you just have one data point. The moments of reversals where we saw the exact opposites of the 1986 rewrite of the tax code, or the 1990 Clean Air Act amendments, which were all done in secret and very successful. The most powerful environmental legislation in history has a name no one even knows. Clean Air Act amendments from 1990. George Mitchell of Maine ran it all through his office right off to the side of the Senate with the door shut. And they got it all done. And one of his big goals, oddly, as a lefty, was to get the environmentalists, lobbyists out of the room. They didn't want compromise, and they wanted their names on the legislation, and they didn't want to give anything to oil or Detroit to pass what, I did some work for NASA. All the folks that I know at NASA say it is the most significant legislation. You see that data point in every satellite scan. And if you lived in the 80s, you heard only about things like acid rain. Let's go on. The last note on this, which I think is just wildly amusing, is Mitchell did this in secret and got the 1990 Clean Air Act amendments passed, and we've not done any significant legislation on the environment ever since. But he left the Senate, and Clinton tagged him to go over to Ireland. They had the Troubles. Right, and all you heard about was acid rain and the Troubles. And he was there for a few years, and they were running these televised conferences. And, one group would just go, I'm going to slit his throat and, do this, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, all right, how about we take all the big players and we meet in a hotel in London? And a week later, they signed the 1998 agreement, which still pretty much works. So all these throat-slitting people actually really wanted to get something done, but they needed to save face. And we see that time and time and time again. So, yeah, transparency is an issue. I've got this wonderful video of Gates bragging about getting the votes to be opened on Mike Johnson's confirmation votes, because they're normally secret. And in secret, he was losing. But when they opened, it was unanimous. And whenever you see something unanimous, Lincoln got no votes in the South in 1860, 0. Whenever you see unanimous, you know it was transparent.
And the thing that's so fascinating to me about just the word transparency is it sounds good. It sounds like we want transparency, right? People run on that. You hear Carolyn Levitt talk about this is the most transparent administration in history. Yes, I don't think she means it that way. But it's like your point, Paul, about thinking critically. If you ask the average person, should the government be transparent, they'd say, of course. But when you explain it, what it really means and what the impact of it is, and how maybe secrecy is better for us and we get more honest results, unsullied by the influence of outsiders and lobbyists and so forth, I think the average person understands it. Have we fixed everything?
Almost. I think we're pretty close.
Halfway there. We're halfway there. It's been, I'm 62 years old, and the past 10 years have been a uniquely challenging time in my life, and I think for other people of my generation. We didn't grow up with this. We might have grown up through Vietnam and Watergate and all kinds of stuff. And older generations went through terrible, terrible things. There's a great quote from Reverend William Barber that's in the book about how this is not the worst thing that's ever happened to the country, and I recently wrote a blog about this as well. We lived through slavery, we lived through the oppression of women, we lived through Jim Crow, we lived through a lot of terrible things, and we will live through this too. But there are things about the current moment that are uniquely dangerous and are something that no living American has ever experienced. And that is very challenging. And it's exhausting, right? It's exhausting. We all know that. So I don't have the answers, but hopefully in the book there's a few suggestions, a few things that people can grab onto.
But you're going to have all the answers in your next book, right?
The sequel with all the answers, so buy it, and everything will be cool.
Is that forthcoming?
It's 8th coming. I've thought about it, but I don't know. I mean, it's the state of play is too volatile right now. Don't even, I wouldn't even attempt to hazard a guess about what America is going to look like a year from now. Anything could happen. I have a friend that I talk to periodically under a pseudonym because he's a real smart guy who works in Democratic politics, but he doesn't have his name out there for the exact reasons you cited. And I asked him that question recently. I said, what do you see, how do you see this playing out? What's the end game? And he said, well, eventually he'll die. I thought, oh my God, like, that's what we're left with? For 8 years it was like, well, this is the thing. Mueller, that's going to be the thing. Or Russiagate, or it's going to be this, or it's going to be Stormy Daniels, whatever. None of them ever were, as you will recall. And now we're just left with, well, he'll die someday. But to my earlier point, that won't be the end of it. I do think it will be a tectonic shift. I think the Republican Party will go into a massive power struggle, and the Ted Cruz's and the J.D. Vance's and the Tom Cottons of the world will go at each other like tooth and nail, and I will be eating popcorn and enjoying it.
Right, me too. I'm going to love it.
All right,
But it's still dangerous.
So Bob, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm going to ask you intelligence officer prediction.
Is it a fog burn-off question?
That would be too easy. No, that's inside stuff. But, so the midterms, where does it go?
Yeah.
Who do you think is going to win? And then what's your prediction for the next big election?
Well, I don't know. I don't really know the answer. I mean, I am not an electoral politics expert. The guy I was just talking about could give you a better answer about what the odds are for given districts to flip, the House to flip, and even the Senate. And every day when I look at the news, I see a different pundit giving me a different opinion about how likely those things are. So I don't even know. I'm not trying to be coy. I just don't know. I think it'll be close because it's always close. Right?
But history will show that it'll probably flip, and then there'll be gridlock for the next 2 years, which
I'm in favor of gridlock, to be honest.
which may not be a bad thing.
Me too.
Yeah,
right?
Under the current
I mean,
circumstances.
Mitch McConnell was the king of obstructionism, and we can use their playbook. I talk about that in the book too.
Yeah.
I am all for obstructionism in the way that I would all be for firemen putting out a burning house fire.
Yeah. And then, what comes next?
What comes next?
Yeah.
So this is the question, like we were saying before. The midterms are a huge, huge inflection point.
Yep.
I think the Republicans are shit scared because in a normal political cycle, they would be in for a drubbing because of thermostatics. It's just the American people are always in a throw the bums out mood.
Yep.
So they almost almost always do that in the midterms. That's in a normal election cycle. I think the American people are particularly unhappy and dissatisfied right now. And based on those special elections that we've seen thus far, I think even the Republicans know, this was in the paper today, that they are looking at a wipeout. That makes them more dangerous in terms of skullduggery and rat fucking and destroying the integrity of the election, the electoral system. So I'm worried about that. I'm worried about guardsmen in the streets. I'm worried about violence. I'm worried about ICE, goons, and Proud Boys, and intimidation, and voting machines, and all that stuff. But let's say we have a free and fair election, and the results are trustworthy, and the Democrats take back the House and maybe the Senate.
Yep.
I think it's a useful and it would be a useful and welcome break on this authoritarian tear. But I think it would only be the beginning, and the subsequent presidential election 2 years down the road is the next battle. I mean, I would like to think that if we can continue to have free and fair elections, the American people will render their verdict. I mean, maybe they'll say, you know what, this Trump thing was all right. We're good with it. and we like J.D. Vance, or we like whoever the successor's gonna be. Maybe. That's what democracy is, right? If they say that. I don't think they will say that. I think they're unhappy. I think they feel like they were sold a bill of goods, right? Prices did not come down. The war in Ukraine did not end. None of the things they were promised, except for the mass deportations. He kept that promise. So I would like to think that in a sane world, we'll have a free and fair election, and pendulum will swing back, and we'll have the restoration of some sanity, and hopefully some repairs too. I know some people, we all do, some people who are not right-wingers, who as far back as 2016 were like, burn it all down, right? Because they're sick of the stodgy, stolid, do-nothing Congress, do-nothing government, and they were ready for that. I always felt like, I want to remodel my kitchen too, but I don't want to do it with a hand grenade, right? Like, maybe there's a better path toward reform than a destruction. Unfortunately, we had the destruction anyway, whether we wanted it or not. So maybe some good can come out of all the damage that's been done. Maybe people will be so shocked and traumatized by what we've lived through over the last 10 years. It could be some kind of movement for reforms that will benefit everyone. Like in Texas, the Republicans are trying to redistrict the state. There's no guarantee that will work out in their favor, right? It could backfire on them. It's very hard to predict how things will go in politics. That's about the only thing I've safely learned in the last 10 years. Not a good answer to your question, but it's a huge unknown.
Well, the American people have short-term memories,
Very short.
so that's one data point. The other one is, depending on who you talk to, 30% of the people will always vote left. That's that tribe. 30% will always vote right. That's that tribe. So you've got 40%. They got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so that's the wild card.
And if you have a free and fair election, right, despite that avalanche of AI and disinformation and misinformation, partisanship and everything else, if you have a free and fair election, those 40% in the undecided category will swing it.
Yep.
Right? I mean, it's scary to me that we have 30% of the country that is with Trump no matter what, after everything we've seen, all the way down to January 6th. I mean, this is just me, but I think that there is no defensible reason that you can give me for supporting this guy at this point. I don't care how conservative you are.
Right.
Conservatives of all people should be opposed to somebody like this. But those 30% appear to be immovable.
And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I think people get their sources from one side and they stick with it.
They
And
do.
That's all they hear.
That's all they hear. That's all they want to hear. They're not going to change
So
the
you don't
channel.
change them.
They can't change, and there's no point in trying to change them, right? I used to argue with people on the right wing in the early years of the Trump administration. I stopped doing it. It was bad for my mental health. I didn't change any minds. I just got frustrated.
So you're pulling a Keanu Reeves.
What do you mean?
So Keanu Reeves says, I don't argue with people anymore. I just let them go ahead, whatever. Yeah, I agree, whatever you say.
He's right.
That's what Keanu says.
Yeah.
Then it must be correct. 'Cause-
Exactly.
And he said, there is no spoon. He was right about that. Yeah, so I stopped doing that. Maybe I was late to the game. Other people knew earlier than me that was a pointless exercise. But that 30% is immovable in my view. But the 40%, just to stipulate that number, those folks presumably are persuadable,
Yeah.
will listen to reason, will look at multiple news sources, make up their own minds if they are able to assess the validity of those sources, credibility of those sources, and they will go in the voting booth and pull whatever lever they were going to pull in a free and fair election.
Wonderful. Well, this was great. Fantastic.
Thank you,
And
guys.
can you...
Vigorous discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Can you mention again, you have a website too, don't you?
Yeah,
Of it?
the blog is on Substack. It's called
Oh.
The King's Necktie, and that's where most of the writing is.
Okay.
I have an older website with the art.
So they should go to the Substack.
They should just go to the
Yeah,
Substack
okay.
if they really want to go deep and back and see what I said about the 2019 impeachment, which I don't even remember what I said. They can be directed to it from the Substack.
Okay. Perfect. Well,
So
thank you.
for having me.
Thanks for coming. This
Thank
is
you, everybody, for coming out.
great conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.